Welcome to the topic of What's GIT. GIT is a distributed version control system for tracking changes in source code during software development. It is designed for coordinating work among programmers, but it can be used to track changes in any set of files. Now we can pick and choose some of the words which is in this definition. That is version control system. It helps in tracking changes in source code. It is used by programmers and it can track any set of files. So we'll see in detail what's this about. Imagine there are developers and programmers, that is couple of developers, John and Lisa. Now this is a very typical simple scenario in an organization. John, being a developer, he has picked up a task that's development code related to user sign-in. Now there are different files that he is supposed to work in or he is supposed to create. That is user sign-in.css, .html, .javascript files, which helps him to develop. Now this is just an example. There may be more files that he is required to work on. Lisa picks up a task related to user registration. That is development code related to user registration. Now the files that she will be working on is user registration.css, registration.html, registration.javascript files. Now it may happen that she is creating totally independent files and she can work independently on these files. Now how Git works is a version of a code is present in a master branch. Now John pulls up a version of code from master. He works on the code. He pushes it back to the master. Lisa also pulls the version of a code from master. She works on the code and she pushes into master. Now how does this work in detail? John is working on his local machine. Even Lisa is working on her local machine. John decides to work on his development task, that is user sign-in. He pulls a code which is present in a remote server into his local machine. He works on that particular version which is present in his local machine. He creates new files, he updates existing files, and the version that he was working on gets converted into a next version. Lisa, on the other hand, she pulls up the version from the master, that is from remote server. She works on this version right now and she updates it, that is create new files, updates existing files and converts it into a new version. Now John might have completed his work earlier, so he decides to push this code into remote server. Now when he pushes the code, the remote server has the latest version. After John had completed his work, Lisa completes her work and she updates her code, pushes her code into the remote server, and the remote server has the latest version now. So this is how Git works. Git tracks the changes, any set of files, and it updates the versions between the local as well as the remote server. So in short, this is how Git work looks like at a very simplistic and a holistic view. Automation testing is not that different from development. Hence, we can add certain words in the Git definition and modify it a little bit. That is, Git is a distributed version control system for tracking changes in source code during software development or automation test script development. It is designed for coordinating work among automation testers as well as programmers. Now imagine a scenario, a very simple scenario again, where there are automation testers. There are a couple of automation testers, Peter as well as Fong. Now Peter picks up a task, that is automation script related to user sign-in, and he picked up another task, that is to create page objects for user registration. Now what he is supposed to do is, he is supposed to create the C# files, that is user sign-in test.cs, page user sign-in.cs, page user registration.cs. Now if you notice, these couple of C# files are related to page objects. Now, an user sign-in test is related to the actual test that he is supposed to perform. Fong, on other hand, she has picked up a task that is test automation script related to user registration. Now, she is supposed to create a user registration.cs, that is C# file, and she is dependent on a page object model or page object class that Peter had created. Now, there is an assumption here. They are working in a C# based Selenium code. That's just an assumption. So in this case, it's little different from how the developers were working, because Fong is dependent on a work that Peter had done. That is a page object that Peter had created. Now, how does Git work in this case? Peter had pulled a version of code from the remote server, that is master branch, where Fong is also supposed to work. Once he pushes the code into remote server, what Fong can do is she can pull the latest code from the remote server. There is the page object class which Peter had created, she can use in her test case. Peter, by the way, he works on his version of the code and pushes into remote server as soon as he is done. Fong, on the other hand, once she has got the page object, she works on the test case and then pushes the code once she is ready. How this is explained in detail is, we have a remote server version. Peter pulls the latest code into his local machine. He creates page objects C# classes for user sign-in and registration. Once he is done with that, he pushes the code into remote server. So the remote server gets updated. Now Fong pulls up the latest code from the remote server and she can work on this version of the remote server. Peter, by the way, what he does is he creates a test related to user sign-in and then he is ready to push the code into remote server. Fong, on the other hand, she is working on tests related to user registration. Once she is good, she pushes the code into remote server. So the remote server get updated with the latest version. So that's how Git works. Now if you notice, the flow how John and Lisa worked on, as well as the Peter and Fong had worked on, were totally different. So it doesn't matter. So Git, what it does is it automatically tracks the changes that is being done by individual person who is working on a version of the code, source code. So Git can take any of the directions. Now imagine you have 8 developers and testers in a team, and you can imagine that they are all working together as a team in a particular project, or different scrum teams or same scrum team. There will be a single remote repository, but they can create their own local versions as well as work on that. Git takes care of all the changes that is being tracked by these developers and testers, and once they push or to the pull from the latest version from the remote server, it's being taken care by Git. Now this one last slide I have put just to give a distinction how different source control systems had adaptation of Git over the years. So I'm not saying Git is the only source control systems available in the market. There is Microsoft Teams Foundation server as well as subversions that were being used around 2015, and if you notice, 69% of the programmers and testers were using Git in 2015, and as and when the year passed, more people got adapted to using Git in their projects, and right now around 2018 it's 87.2% where Git is being used, and I'm sure by 2020 more it might have crossed around 90% of people using it in their projects. So that's about Git. In next video we'll be emphasizing on more commands related to Git and more terminologies related to Git.